Good morning, all of you beautiful nerds from around the world, and welcome to the morning stream here on the Den of Nerds Live, the very best way to start your nerdy day. On today's show, Adam from FanJackShirt is going to join the program, and we're talking about scoops. Are these good scoops, or are these pooper scoopers? We're going to get into that. There's some debate out there in the scooping community about Jeremy Conrad's Ultimatum scoop. And, of course, Captain Marvel. That's what's on the title. That's what's on the thumbnail. Is Captain Marvel really going to lead the Avengers in Phase 4 and Phase 5? Some people say no. Some people say yes. We're going to get into all of that and more. What is going on, everybody? I see a bunch of beautiful people in the chat today. Stormbreaker's here. FanJackShirt. Trinity. Mike Porter. Renee. Trev. Sam. London Dubs, Marvel Maniac, Bill M's in the building, Trev's here, Grey Dawn, Yinzer Jim, Adam G, I might have said Sam already, Jonathan, Burke the Nerd, Star Wars Santa Brian. I'm running out of breath. A lot of people here. Woo! What's going on? Ooh, Scotty Hawk's in the building. Good Rips Pong morning. Hey, how we all doing today, man? How's everybody doing? Thursday. Almost through the work week. We've got another great episode of the Clone Wars coming tomorrow. That is going to be very, very cool. I know we're going to be very excited to be getting into that. Oh, MCU Cosmic in the chat. Kevin Feige, Captain Marvel, is about to take the lead at the forefront of the entire cinematic universe. Well, I'll say this. Jeremy, if you're watching, I think you're going to find this chat very, very interesting. And I'd love your input as well. To see what you think about all of this. But before we get into a lot of that stuff, guys, I got to talk about something that occurred to me yesterday as I was watching videos on the internet. Chet, pause the music. Chet. Something occurred to me yesterday as I was watching stuff on the internet, and I want to get into this. I got to be honest, guys. This one's going to be hot. This one's going to be spicy. Throw it on.
It's a hot day. Ooh, yeah.
I was convinced yesterday that although I absolutely love George Lucas, it is actually 1,000% a good thing that he is not actively involved in Star Wars. Let me explain. Pause. So, little video came out yesterday, the Star Wars show, the cool show done by Lucasfilm. They did it remote. It was cool. Anthony Daniels was on there. That was cool. They also had a pre-recorded interview, a conversation with George Lucas and Dave Filoni talking about the Clone Wars. And as I was watching this interview, they asked George what his favorite episodes of the Clone Wars are. And my man literally comes out and talks about the droid episodes, which literally just have, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, these are literally episodes of droids alone in the desert having an existential crisis about their existence. Not only that, if you watch that interview, and I do recommend that you watch that interview, there's a few different examples where Dave is talking about how George ran stuff during the Clone Wars. And essentially, Dave had all of these ideas and all of these plans and all of these things, and a lot of the people that worked for him, the hires and the people that created the show, would come back to him with stuff like, that's impossible, that's ridiculous, that's crazy. And George's attitude was literally like, we'll find a way. Look, you're just going to do this. And look, I've been told by people behind the scenes that the Clone Wars was this thing that George wanted to do, and they spent way too much money on it. Way too much money on it. Like, way too much money. Okay? So, Not only that, George would basically say stuff to Dave like, I kind of want to do an episode on tariffs and trade disputes. And then they'd have to figure out how to put that into a kid's show. You know what I mean? And how to make that interesting for kids. And you're sitting there and you're watching this, and it's like, look, as much as I love George, and as much as George is a creative force of nature, obviously, he gave us Star Wars. In case you didn't know, I'm a fan of Star Wars. Now, despite that, he is also almost maniacally absurd with the things that he loves and the things that he wants to put on screen. And again, yet again, another example of the conversations that we have here as a community, the conversations that we have, and how that translates into the real world. It's crazy. We were just talking about, on Monday, we had a community stream. We're talking about, should Dave Filoni be in charge of Star Wars? You know what I mean? Should Dave Filoni be in charge of Star Wars? And one of the things we brought up was the filler episodes, the episodes of filler in the Clone Wars. And I think that it's kind of fair to say, especially if you watch that interview, that a lot of that stuff didn't actually come from Dave. I mean, we know the robot episodes didn't come from Dave. Do you know what I mean? So, just sort of a funny situation, because I know, it's one of those things where, of course, hindsight is 2020, and after the sequel trilogy, a lot of people are calling for George to come back, George, come back to Star Wars. I think it's moments like these where we need to take a step back and just be like, okay, look, obviously we all love George, but can you really blame Disney for getting scripts about microbiome and weird George Lucas THX 1138? Is that what the correct number? Getting handed some weird stuff like that, and then looking at the prequels, which I love, obviously. Star Wars Santa hates the prequels. I don't know if he has ever told you that. I see him in chat right now. But it's like, can we really blame Disney? Can we really blame Disney for being like, George, these are nice. These are nice. We're going to go with this. Now, I'm not saying that everything they did in the sequel trilogy was perfect. Of course, they should have had a plan. They should have mapped things out, more cohesion between the different directors. But the hot take is, I am reminded yet again that it is actually a blessing that George is no longer involved in Star Wars, with all due respect to the creator. All right, so, okay, so that was, look, and also, too, just, I'm going to say, go ahead and watch that interview. I think they either 1.5'd or 2 timed that interview. It feels very awkward, like the timing of it. The interview is, I don't know, kind of awkward. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of awkward. But it was a cool interview. Again, something else that's really funny is we were talking as a community about Dave Filoni's interview with George, right? This is a notorious story that Dave tells all the time. I told you guys about it on Monday. Dave told us about it when he came back to our college, because, again, Dave and I went to the same college. They asked George straight up if he had any recollection of the first interview with Dave Filoni, and he's just straight up like, no. Well, I must have liked him. I hired him. Oh, my God. It's the most George answer ever. Love you, George. Love you, George. Just collect your royalties and stuff, man. And look, I still think input would help, but maybe not. Maybe we don't need George back. In either case, let's now bring in Adam from FanJackShirt. Adam, I'm bringing you in. How you doing, brother?
Good. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning indeed, sir. Let me get these. Chet, get this. Why don't we have Adam on the screen? What are you doing? You're killing me. So, Adam, first of all, do you have any input on the George Lucas thing before we get into talking about the Brie Larson Captain Marvel stuff?
All right, so I haven't seen this interview. I will watch it though. As soon as we're done, that's the first thing I'm going to queue up. But let me just remind everyone about Strange Magic.
Mm-hmm.
Have you all forgotten about that film? The first George Lucas storied film after he was, done being George Lucas in the Star Wars world. Man, that was an epic disaster. Um, Look, I think we all need to bow down at the feet of George Lucas because he gave us Star Wars. But George Lucas also, I hate to say it, George Lucas also hurt Star Wars a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, to me, Star Wars hasn't been the same since 1997.
Yeah, I think you and Star Wars Santa would like, like here's the thing, like it's tough for me because okay, so I'm a prequel fan, right? But at the same time, I can completely acknowledge like all of the flaws and like the Phantom Menace, particularly, I think was sort of a huge contentious point for a lot of fans because it's so radically different, and it's not just different like aesthetically, it's not just different in like it's literally like a almost a different kind of filmmaking where like Star Wars the original trilogy is very protagonist focused. It's very much focused on this group of characters. It has that sort of serialized Buck Rogers feel, but it sort of finds its own footing, and it's really about that main cast of characters. Well, the Phantom Menace, like it's one of these things where it's like, who is the main character of that movie? Like that movie isn't even structured narratively like
Right.
a normal film. Like there's no main character. You just it's literally just a bunch of dope Star Wars shit being shown to
Right.
you. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's tough for me, man. But I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying about Star Wars
I mean,
not
we
being the same.
we gotta love George. We do, but I'm with you. I maybe it's not such a hot take because I mean I or I'm in the hot take camp because I agree with you 100%. Thank you for what you've done, but let others take it from here.
Yeah.
Now, again, I also agree with you 100%. We need better people to take it from here, but I don't think George is the answer.
Yeah, yeah. I would say, I mean, like, look, we're gonna get sort of lost down the rabbit hole, but I'll say this: I think you should bring George in, but like for namesake only. Like, like it's almost like have him in there. You know what I mean? And definitely allow his input. And I'll say this: when it comes to tech, and I
Oh
think
yeah.
as far as a director, because that's another thing that's really interesting in the interview is that he clearly knows things like coverage and like all of these different ways to actually shoot live action, and he taught Dave a lot of that. And the way they did Clone Wars was ridiculous because it feels like they 3D rendered everything and then moved cameras around like live action, which again like probably made the cost skyrocket. But it he clearly knows a lot of things about filmmaking, and his fundamental like knowledge of the Force and of Star Wars is great. But it's just like it's what it really comes down to is he wants to tell the stories he wants to tell, and he really does not give a shit if like people care. I mean, he just
Yeah.
really doesn't, and I think unfortunately or fortunately, depending on where you're standing, that just doesn't play with a brand that has that big of that big
Well,
of a following, that much of a rabid fan base. You know what I mean? It just doesn't play.
yeah, and that's the thing about Star Wars is it's one of the most unique franchises and IPs where Star Wars means different things to different people, and there's no real like focused cohesion of what is Star Wars.
Right.
There's so many different angles of it, and people love like within its own like the main part of Star Wars, you have the Star Wars lore and the Force, and then you have the wars part of it, and even in that camp the people are divided on which one they actually want more of. So it's so weird, like what really is Star Wars.
Right. Definitely. Definitely. A question perhaps for another day, but awesome. Look, just it's a good interview. It's really funny. Well, I found it humorous. It's a serious interview, but I just found it humorous because I'm just like George being George. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, let's sort of get into the news of the day, the topic of the day. Now, look, I want to say this right away because I definitely look, Jeremy Conrad is a friend of the channel. Obviously, I'm pumped that he's watching. If he's still watching, and Jeremy, I would love to know your take on what you like of Grace Randolph and about the scoop and everything like that. But for the purposes of the content, I'm not really gonna. I can't have two conversations going on at once, right? So this is just you and me, Adam, talking about this. But I am interested in what Jeremy thinks. So a couple of days ago, Jeremy scooped Ultimatum. Ultimatum is a big thing coming to the MCU. I thought it was awesome. Such a crazy idea. We did a live stream where we talked about it here. And then, I reached out to Jeremy, who was kind enough to do an interview with me. And I thought the interview was good and full of all sorts of good, not only good insight into what could happen in the MCU, but also like the process of scooping and where this comes from, right? So Grace Randolph was talking about this on Twitter. She didn't even do a video about it. And there were people, basically, I think where this started was people were asking her about what did she think of Ultimatum, or if she was going to do a video on Ultimatum, right? And so she kind of came out and said that she did some digging and that she did not think that Ultimatum was real. And she also said that Captain Marvel will not be leading the Avengers. Now, this popped up on Reddit, and the Marvel Studios spoilers subreddit is sort of a big hub for a lot of the most hardcore people that follow leaks and spoilers for Marvel, okay? I'm on there a lot. I know probably a lot of our people are on there a lot. And the people on the subreddit have different opinions. In fact, some people on the subreddit actually don't like Jeremy, and they don't think that MCU Cosmic is good for scooping. And there's always contention out there when you're a personality and you're scooping stuff. But I tell you what, man, they really don't like Grace. Like their opinion of Grace is very, very low. But I did find it interesting. My opinion on Grace, and my opinion on most scoopers just in general, is I try to judge a scooper. There's two things, and I've actually talked about this before. You probably heard me say this before, Adam. It is the quality of their sources, and then it is the quality of their judgment. It's not just what kind of information do they have access to, but it's also where's their judgment in as far as when are they going to like actually deliver reports about things? Are they going to hold on to things until they can confirm that sort of thing? So I look sort of as far as judgment and sources. Now, when it comes to someone like Jeremy, I think that he has good on both sides, right? He has good on both sides. He's clearly got good sources. I know for sure that he's got sources because I know people that know people that I know that he's got sources. When it comes to Grace, I think she actually does have good sources, but she doesn't have the best judgment. And so let's sort of start from there. What do you think about her? What do you think about the Ultimatum scoop? And then we can sort of dig into the Captain Marvel stuff, because I think the Captain Marvel stuff is going to lead us into some good conversation.
Right. So Grace is, I don't, look, I'm not going to, if you're going to expect me to trash talk, and I'm not talking to you, Josh, just in general. If you're expecting me to trash talk, I'm not going to do that, but I'll give my opinion on my history, not personal, but my viewing history with Grace Randolph. Man, Grace Randolph has been here a long time.
True.
She's been around the YouTube game and the nerd culture for a very long time. So I agree with you. I think it'd be silly to say that she doesn't know people who work places, because she does. She has to. I could be proven wrong on that, but I based on the fact that she did work for Marvel, she has to still have people in the know. Now, and Grace has been around for a very long time. I mean, I don't know if people remember the name Ray William Johnson, like one of the early YouTubers, like that era. Like Grace has been around that long.
Yeah.
And I watched Grace way back in the day because Grace was one of the forefront Twitter or YouTube channels when it came to talking movie news on a daily basis. So she's gotten this almost million follower channel, which is it's not something to scoff at either. Now, as far as her scoops go, I mean, look, I sort of fell off watching her a little while back when the whole Campia getting paid shill thing happened. Now, I'm not saying that I'm standing for Campia here, but it got to the point where I was like, Grace, how the business, how this works. You can't possibly realistically think that people are getting paid. So it kind of turned me off on her. I have more recently gone back and watched some of her stuff, but I always do it with like a 6 foot social distancing when it comes to Grace. Like I watch it from afar. Sometimes it's fun entertainment. But I don't know, man. The scooping, I don't know her track record. Maybe you can enlighten everyone on what you think about her track record. Because I know that you went. I remember watching a stream that you went through that whole chart of
Yeah.
people. And you
Yeah.
kind of picked out who is not good and who is.
Right.
But I don't think Grace was on there. So what's
No.
your overall opinion on her I guess percentage, if that's a measure you want to do?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's a tough one. So she wasn't on that list, and she wasn't like really used in that data pool. It would be interesting to go back and see if they've actually updated that. I know that there's been a lot of updates likely to that, with more information. But I mean, there's a couple of things. Here's the thing. I think that there's a couple of things going on. She's accurate in some ways, but I do think that she tends to pick scoops that are really safe outs a lot of the time. Like for instance, like it's easy to scoop something out and then be like, okay, well things just change. Now things do change. This goes back to the judgment thing, right? So it's like, let's talk like for instance Charles Murphy. Like Murphy's really he tries to really be explicit about, okay, this is what I know for now, but things could change and things do change, right? So it's a tough one, man, because I think the things that really stick out for me, like if I could ask her a question, I would be the number one thing that confuses me from her scoops is the Norman Osborn thing. The Norman Osborn thing really, really just blows me away. And I don't even fully know if she's ever really talked about that. And, maybe Jeremy can, can help me out with that one. Dude, what is the deal with that Osborne scoop? Like, did anybody else see it? Did anybody else corroborate that? You know what I mean? Because, like, she claims that there was a post-credit scene that essentially had the Sinister Six and had Norman Osborn on there. You know what I mean? And that went away. Another one of her big notorious scoops that she got like a lot of heat for was the meeting with Kathy Kennedy and Bob Iger and how they wanted her to step down. Now, here's the thing. I know from my sources that something along those lines happened, but I think here's where I think Grace gets into trouble and why she's probably not the most reliable of source. And it's almost like you have to take what she's saying and play this game where you reverse engineer it. Well, what's the actual intel here? Because, like, for instance, I got to be careful about what I say here, but I know that there were meetings had where there was potentially going to be a shifting of power at Lucasfilm, but it was not under the guise of like, we need someone to take over this job, right? So she almost like created a narrative around a real thing that happened in order to play to her base, right? And so I think that's potentially even what she's doing with the Captain Marvel story, which we can get into, where basically I feel like the idea of Captain Marvel leading the Avengers, well, take a step back. What does that even mean? Who led the Avengers in phases 1 through 3? Who would you say led the Avengers?
I mean, the default is Cap, but you can make an argument that it could have been Tony. It could have been anybody.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's really nobody leading the Avengers. Like, you could say it was Cap. You could say it was Tony. Both of those are good answers. Yeah. But they're not necessarily, like, that's what I'm saying. So it's like, what does that even mean, really?
Right.
Captain Marvel, I think, if anything, will lead the cosmic side of the MCU. There's that big rumor of the breakdown that there'll be a cosmic side and an earthbound side. Even Jeremy in our interview talked about how Doctor Strange will likely play a big role in sort of leading the new Avengers because he can pop up in any movie. He has not only insight and access, but he can teleport around and do stuff like that, right? So now if Grace heard something like, Captain Marvel in charge of the Avengers, well, it's actually what I've heard is Doctor Strange is going to be the one popping up in all of these films and doing this, that, and the other thing. Then she could interpret that as being like, well, Captain Marvel's not going to be in charge of the Avengers. And because she does tend to have a little bit more of that, I don't know how to even say it. Like, how do you say it? Like the more conservative minded or, that sort of fan base that really doesn't like Brie Larson, right? She's sort of she has a lot of those people that watch her stuff, that she could interpret something in a way that's technically not wrong, but it's technically not right either. And it's just really used to sort of incite her base. So I think she plays a lot of those games, but I do think she has access to information. I do think she has access to sources, and I believe that she has gotten stuff right before. And I also think she understands the industry better than a lot of people. Like she'll come out when I watch her stuff, I watch it because I really like the way she analyzes things from like a business mindset, and
Sure.
she definitely knows the industry. And maybe I'm just sort of attracted to that kind of mindset because it tends to be where I go as well. But that's what I think is like there's some spin, some obvious spin. I do think she has info, but she spins it in a way to sort of incite her base. That's what I think.
Yeah, I had completely forgotten about the whole secret Disney phone call to oust Kathleen Kennedy, which at the time I kind of shrugged my shoulders at that one. Like I don't know that I buy that. Do I think that the top heads and the top brass had meetings? Sure, but they have meetings all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I never believed that there was an Illuminati type phone call where literally everybody was on the call except for Kathleen Kennedy, and he's bringing in Feige and all the heads of every single thing, every department of Disney that's ever been created, and they're going to talk about Kathleen Kennedy behind her back. Um, that's not really how Iger goes about his business, and
Right.
not to mention Iger doesn't ever have to do that. He's Iger. If he wants to talk to somebody, he will talk to somebody. He doesn't Iger's not afraid to have a hard conversation with somebody. That's not who he is. It's not how he got to where he is
Right.
by being shady like that. So I never really bought that either. And yeah, the Oscorp thing. I sent you a link on Discord so that
Gotcha.
because I was gonna read some of it.
Oh yeah,
but
that's the tweet. Yeah.
yeah. So Oscorp is coming to the MCU like next month. And it says, by the way, there's some misinformation out there. I did not personally see Far From Home, but have a source who did, which is where this information comes by.
Yeah. See,
from.
okay. So here's the thing. That again is like, what does that mean? Poor judgment, right? Like that's poor judgment. Like you have to hold on to some things sometime. You have to try to confirm. You know what I mean? You have to do your due diligence here. And I think that's one of her things is like there's just sort of a lack of judgment there. So I don't know. But okay, so let's get into the scoop itself and let's sort of speculate. First of all, let's talk about Ultimatum. Okay, so she says, and it's a succinct tweet. It just says that what did she say? It's fake or it's not real, or the Ultimatum thing is.
I have it up here. It says I did some digging and the Ultimatum rumors are false, as is Captain Marvel definitely leading the Avengers.
Interesting. Okay. So she says that the Ultimatum rumors are false, meaning she says that there's like zero. I mean, like that's the thing. Like again, it's sort of a weird way to put it. I don't know. First of all, I believe that the Ultimatum stuff is real. Now, that's not to say that it won't change or it won't take shape that's so radically different that you could say, like for instance, the idea of adapting the Ultimatum storyline and the idea of Marvel doing something with Ultimatum in the title are perhaps different things. But you saw the interview. What do you think, man? I mean, like it seems when I listened to Jeremy and he was like, I think this is a really good scoop for him. You know what I mean? Like it's a really big scoop. And it was a good get. And again, he was so confident in it that he put into the article the other big scoops that he had gotten in a similar timetable, possibly even from the same sources. But just your opinion, you watched the interview, you see what she's saying. What do you think about it?
I think it's more likely than not. I'm sort of in the middle of the road, and I don't want to play both sides, but Uh, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I know Jeremy's watching, so he can correct me if I'm wrong too. But this information is basically coming from those grids
Correct.
that Jeremy talked about.
Well, so yeah, my interpretation of it was that it's a combination of hard info that he got from some grids, and then also reached out to some sources, had a source reach out to him with a question, and so it was sort of a combination of putting some pieces together with the hard evidence from the sheet.
Right. I mean, look, the grid is definitely a good start to doing that. So that's why having some hard evidence to go along with your story is always more beneficial than I heard a source,
Right.
a random source. So that would lead more credence to why I would think this would be more real. I also think that the story itself could lend for some good cherry picking. So that also makes sense to me,
Mm-hmm.
especially the fact that, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know Ultimate and Ultimatum 100%, but isn't part of it where Magneto is pissed that the kids are dead, and then
Yes.
he
Yeah.
kind of loses his mind. So the fact that Quicksilver is dead in the MCU could be a nice lead-in for that.
Yeah. Now the rumor is that Quicksilver will be brought back in WandaVision, and that's. I mean, I don't know if I could say confirmed, but it really feels like Quicksilver is going to be back in WandaVision. Now, will he make it out of WandaVision? Will he actually be back in the main line MCU? You know, possibly. You know, Jeremy had an interesting take on it where he said, well, what if they use Wanda? They could use Wanda and replace Magneto with Wanda, which kind of lines up with, like, you know, Multiverse of Madness and different things like that, where essentially she would be the one to snap and cause all of these problems, and then they'd need to shut her down. But yeah, that's the baseline there.
Well, and I'm curious too, because in that same article, Jeremy talks about how there was rumors about Ultimatum being a TV show, possibly for Disney Plus. So I'm
Yeah.
curious if there, things change so much that one idea a year ago could have folded into a new idea as they're coming along. So I'll be honest, I would lean from all the things that Jeremy has brought forth, I would lean more towards yes, that something to the effect of Ultimatum and the Ultimates of a cherry picking situation is definitely happening. I think, look, unfortunately, Jeremy, I got to tell you, you got to change your name, man, because so many, look, MCU Cosmic is a good name, but so many people confuse it for Cosmic Book News.
Yeah.
And we all know how much Cosmic Book News is not the greatest.
Didn't James Gunn just dunk on Cosmic Book News, or was that We've Got This Covered? He just dunked on one of the pooper scoopers.
Yeah, I think it was We Got This Covered, but I wouldn't be surprised if Cosmic Book got the ire of him down the road.
They're pretty bad, man. Like they're straight up bad. Yeah. So okay, so let's talk about Captain Marvel a little bit now. There's so much speculation about Brie Larson and about Captain Marvel. So much when it comes to this character, and it's a interesting thing because I know that the narrative sort of got away from it. I've spoken about my opinion on this many times, but Brie said some stuff. Yeah, it was stupid to say, but then the way that it was used and twisted and just kind of repeated in content was crazy. It caused like this whole nother thing that is so bizarre. And so, do you think? Let me just ask you this. Let's start here. Do you think Marvel looked at what was going on? I mean, they obviously they keep an eye on what's going on with the reception of fans and different things. What do you think Marvel's thoughts are on the situation with Brie? Because there's a couple of things that are just factually true. Number one, the directors and I believe even the writer for the first film are not returning for the second movie. A $1 billion movie is getting a sequel, and it is not having the directors from the first movie or the writers from the first movie come back. Can't argue with that. Number two, Marvel seemed to have plans to put Tom Holland's Spider-Man in a film with Captain Marvel Brie Larson. Now, whether or not that's to help her image or not, it looks like that, even if it doesn't come to pass, was at least on the table. And so I ask you, Adam, what do you think Marvel thinks of the whole situation with Brie Larson, and what do you think they're actually going to do, if anything, about it?
I think Kevin Feige, no matter what, still loves Brie Larson as a person and as an actress, and I think he loves the character of Captain Marvel. I went back and kind of picked out some of the quotes that he had, and I'm not gonna for verbatim read them, but he talks about how he loves the character and how she literally will become one of the most powerful characters in the MCU, which is high talk. And we've kind of already almost seen it. So he's all about that. And Jeremy in the chat quoted something that he said, that one of the highlights of my career at Marvel was introducing her at Comic-Con and having her come on stage and stand there with literally almost everybody else from our movies. She was at the forefront, and it was great foreshadowing, not just for how audience are going to embrace Brie as this character, more on that in a second, but also for how Captain Marvel is about to take the lead and be at the forefront of the entire cinematic universe.
Right.
And that was about a year ago, right? Yeah, that was March of 2019. So fast forward to a year today, do I think he feels the same? I do. I don't see why he would feel any differently. Look, I know that there's not been the greatest reception to Brie and the movies, but I think his reaction to changing that is possibly getting new directors in to try to kind of change the narrative, not to sour on Brie Larson or the character going forward.
Yeah, dude, I feel you. It's funny because I think that, some people would say, and there were all those reports about how Marvel had lost confidence in Brie and in Brie Larson. And I think those are just so silly because they obviously haven't lost confidence in Black Panther, of Chadwick Boseman, and both of those movies, which were billion-dollar films, they don't have a sequel for years. You know what I mean? Years. But Marvel's just a different animal. They have so much. They have it's an embarrassment of riches with the characters and with the things that they want to put onto the silver screen. And so, I think by that logic, you just can't assume that about Brie Larson. I will say though, for as much as people like to just kind of hand wave a lot of that stuff away and think that it doesn't matter, I do think that there are examples, even at Disney, specifically if you look at what they did with ESPN when there was this whole kind of leaning into politics and then backing away from that as quickly as possible and restructuring and taking people out that were talking about, their politics on ESPN. Disney's not stupid, and they do understand that there are things that go on with different personalities and in the political atmosphere of our day that they would work to make corrections and do things to right the ship. I mean, Bob Iger has probably had a myriad of different meetings about these sort of things, and with different PR firms, different analytics companies where they're trying to analyze this stuff and really figure out what is actually going on. And so I think that to just hand wave it away would be a mistake. I do think that Brie, as an ambassador for a big brand and as being someone that shoulders a lot of responsibility, she does need to be more mindful with the way that she says things. You know what I mean? And one would hope that she's sort of getting coached, you know what I mean, for that. And I would hope also that maybe several years from now, that tension online between people that have different political views does ease up a little bit. But I'm wondering if you have any insight or if you have any thoughts about that. Do you agree? Do you think it should just be hand waved away? Or do you think that, there's something to it and that these actors and these actresses do need to sort of be kept in check? I mean, we just saw an interview with Chris Evans, and he talked about how he made a conscious effort to back off of the Trump bashing because of trying to just acknowledge the difference of opinions and the way that sort of hits his potential fan base. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about that.
Um, that's tricky, right? Because you would like people to have the same image that you want to portray as a company, and then at the same time, you don't want to be, the Gestapo telling people that they need to silence themselves.
Hmm.
So that's certainly a fine line that you have to play. Do I think that it would be in Disney's best interest to have conversations with Brie and say, look, we get it, and we're on your side, but let's try to come to a middle ground here on, so that we can make sure that your character and your role here is prolonged. Then yeah, I think that would be smart for them. But I do also think that uh eventually this could all die down if we just get a great movie.
Sure.
And I think that's the thing. I think that there are definitely, look, like you said, Chris Evans was never shy about talking politics
Right.
ever since the president uh, came around.
And Mark
But
Ruffalo as well. Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo way more
Yeah. I
than
would agree.
Evan,
Hmm.
and but nobody gives them crap. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna say, okay, I'll take that back. Not nobody, but the majority of fans don't look for the replacement of Captain Marvel and Bruce Banner.
Right.
So I think, and that has to do with the fact that the movies and the roles that they've been given, they have the ability to outshine their words that they speak.
Right.
So I think that this could go away if we get a very, very good Captain Marvel. We're gonna need a stellar Captain Marvel movie, and you know what? Disney does this. They do their first time, they see if it works, and if it doesn't, they replace. It's no big deal. So I actually think that's the best step that they can do. Not necessarily telling people what to say, because like I just said, if you say that to Brie Larson, you got to go say it to Chris Evans. You got to go say it to Mark Ruffalo too. You got to
Yeah.
you can't play favorites on this.
No, I agree. I 1000% agree. I do think though that business is business, and if you look at some of the stuff with Star Wars, right? You look at some of the tension between John Boyega and Lucasfilm and Disney. You look at the tension between Oscar Isaacs and Disney. Disney is not afraid to let you know if you're crossing the magical kingdom guidelines. You know what I mean? They're not afraid to. We know this. So I think that, if you look at the political landscaping, you look at Disney as a brand, I think 1000% they had conversations with her. I think 1000% they told her what was wrong and what was right with what she said. Now, I think that actors are people, and they're free to do whatever they want. This is America. You're free to do whatever you want. However, it's much like when I talk about professional athletes and smoking marijuana, right? So like, here's the thing: when you're a professional athlete and you sign a contract to play sports for millions of dollars, and it says in your contract you just can't go get high, then you have given up a portion of your just normal everyday American free rights, because you've now entered a relationship with an insignia, with a business, and with a brand. And it's the same thing at Disney. So if you want to be Captain Marvel and you want to have the influence, the power, and the money that comes with that, you've got to play ball. 1000%. Business is always like this. There's always compromise. But specifically, when it's a big entity that's giving an opportunity to an individual, you enter an agreement with that entity and with that organization, and you just simply have to play ball. And so for me, when I see some of these people that put their political beliefs above the understanding that they have entered a business relationship with an entity that is going to demand certain things, it's not even that I find it like annoying, or it's not even that I find it against my personal politics, I just find it like really irresponsible. That's the equivalent of getting hired at a restaurant, okay? And you come into the restaurant and you have these beliefs that washing your hands is bad. It washes away. You don't want to do it. That's fine. You can do that, but you can't work at this restaurant and do that. It's like this absurdly entitled way of viewing the world. And so, like, I just I get turned off by it because of that. I'm like, wait, you don't understand the opportunity you're being given? I mean, do you know how many other people want to be Captain Marvel? Probably a lot, Right. And it's just, I find it like sort of disrespectful. If you want to be an activist, go be an activist. Disney, Marvel Studios, Lucasfilm, any of these big companies, they're businesses. These are publicly traded businesses. It's not just you. Do you own any stock? I shouldn't ask you this, but let's just say hypothetically, if you own stock in Disney, you're fucking with my money.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a business. So that's kind of where I come at it from. And I'm like, dude, look, if she can't play ball, she's got to go. But I think she understands that, maybe more behind closed doors than anything, but I think she understands.
Yeah, I would guess she does. I don't know that I'm that far into the feelings that you have, but I would say that you're not alone in your feelings. I would say that that's not necessarily an unpopular opinion.
Right.
So yeah, no, look, I'm sure Brie Larson wants to be in the industry for a long time. She has the talent when given the right material. So I don't disagree, and she's not a solo entity either. She has people, she has PR, she has managers, she has the whole team. So but it's tough for her too, right? Because then she goes and does a car commercial that isn't necessarily way over the top, but then some people believe it to be. So it's tough. I mean, she's in a position right now where everything she says, whether it's intent to be a political statement or not, is picked apart to see if it is political. So
yeah,
I don't envy the position she's in.
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, and I think it's funny. I think it's totally fair. I mean, look, I think all we can do is try to be just reasonable about it. You know what I mean? Like, as many barking dogs are going to get into this conversation, and they're going to do their usual shtick, and they're going to make their videos, and they're going to make their articles, and sort of monetize the tension that she has between a certain sector of the fan base. My opinion is, like, what we want to do here is, like, not engage in that, but also not, like, hand wave away where those problems and where that frustration is sort of coming from. And it's like, look, I acknowledge it, but my thing is, first of all, that movie really isn't as bad as people say. Like, that movie is, people say that Captain Marvel's trash and Captain Marvel's horrible and all these things. I personally got hung up about the scrolls. I can't get my head wrapped around good guy scrolls, like, in that mass quantity. Like, I just didn't like that twist. But overall, it's not a bad movie. Like, people are saying, like, oh, it's like the worst and all this sort of stuff. I do find it interesting that they changed the directors, and I think you're right. Part of the strategy from Disney might just be like, we need to make the next Captain Marvel undeniably amazing. Mm-hmm. Like, undeniably amazing would be a win, and it would potentially even change the image for her. So I think that she'll still probably have a lot of people hanging on her stuff, and trying to interpret that. And I don't think she should be held hostage by that. It's not as though she should anything seemingly political go away from. But I do think that whatever the company decides is the best way to move forward, if she's a team player, she has to adhere to that. That's just my opinion on it. You know what I mean? So, but the thing about that is, too, we might not ever know what that actually looks like. We might not ever see what that actually is, if there is some kind of guidelines or something like that, unless she, like, went full heel turn and, like, exposed Marvel, which would be really interesting. But
that won't happen.
Yeah, that won't happen. Folks, let's get into Q&A. We only probably got about 10 more minutes, but if you got a question for Adam or myself, drop it on into the chat. We'll go like 10 more minutes We'll just try to cover what you guys are talking about. I know the chat is always going, but when we're in the middle of conversing, I can't always keep an eye on it. So if you had something you wanted to bring up, bring it on up.
Yeah, I saw a lot of the talk about her actual comments that sort of sparked it. And yeah, like I there's so many different sides to it, right? So you could take it as from the start it was wrong. You could take it as what she said was right, but she came across the way she said it was wrong. Like she just didn't express herself well. And then you could say the other side, the third side is, well, she literally did nothing wrong. So hey, it's tough. I just wish we could all move past it, and I hope one day we will. Because at the end of the day, I enjoy more of the stuff where we can talk about Brie Larson doing a great Marvel Captain Marvel movie than this stuff. So it might be 5 years down the road when they actually get to Captain Marvel 2, but we'll get there, I think, eventually.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those. It's tough, right? Because like I feel you. Like it would be nice to just talk about Captain Marvel, but like in my opinion, even in 2 years from now, when we start talking about Captain Marvel, if you don't like, if you're not mentioning, you're not telling the full story. Like if you don't, like it is a part of it. Like it's one of those weird things where people and I sort of get frustrated with people on the right when they're like, get the politics out of my shit. And then it's like, all they do is talk about the politics. You know what I mean? So it's like, you can't take it out. It is a part of it. She's going to be integrally tied to this. I think the only thing you can do as a commentator or even as a fan is just, how do you feel about it? State it. You don't have to linger on it. And then just let's talk about her cool powers. Is Rogue going to take her powers? You know what I mean? Like, is she going to be messing with Sword? You know, like, is she going to be in charge of the Avengers? Should she be in charge of the Avengers? Because for my money, like, she really shouldn't be. She knows, like, next to none of these people. You know what I mean?
I'm pulling for Doctor Strange.
Oh, my God. Doctor Strange would be so much better of a leader of the Avengers. You know? Yeah. But that's just, that's just opinion or whatever. But let's see here. Let's see if we got any chat in here. I know Maverick Pilgrim says, was that enough to bring up? Were we able to... Oh, wow. No, that's not the one I wanted to talk about. He was talking about Civil War II, which would be interesting. I mean, and this is another thing that I kind of say about Brie is everybody's like, oh, she's so horrible. No, she's perfectly cast. Like, she's literally perfectly cast. That is exactly the Carol Danvers that I remember from the comic book. So I think she's good like that. And maybe it's okay that you don't like her because a lot of people didn't like her in the comics either.
Yeah. I admittedly, I haven't read a whole lot of Captain Marvel. I haven't read Civil War II yet. But from the cliff notes that I've gotten, they would have to really change a lot of that, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they'd have to change a lot of it. I mean, I don't see them doing Civil War II anytime soon. I mean, first of all, Tony's gone, and one of the interesting aspects of that was sort of Tony versus Carol. And yeah, I don't know if they'll do anything like that. Plus, it had like pre-crime and stuff. Like Civil War II is interesting, but it's like Minority Report in the Marvel universe. You know what I mean? It's like I don't know if that's really the way we need to go. But you know what I think would be really cool is if Carol actually joined with like the Thunderbolts. I think that would be really interesting because particularly if if Ross is involved. And she does come from a military background. And so it could be interesting to see if she could be coerced into siding with a militaristic approach to the problems just because that's sort of her wheelhouse. You know what I mean? I'd be into that.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I don't necessarily think they may even ever do a Civil War 2. And if they do, I mean, maybe in like I'm not even joking, 15 years. Possibly.
Yeah.
Like kind of bring it all back after, because Civil War is just too fresh in our minds. And just to even like create a Civil War 2, I think fans might just be like about it. Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting. Salute Your Short says, I want Shuri to take up the mantle of Black Panther. I want to know what you think about that, man. What do you think? Should Shuri be Black Panther or should Shuri possibly take over for Iron Man? What do you think?
I don't like for Iron Man. I would lean more towards Black Panther because aren't isn't there a chance? Wasn't there rumors about Iron Lad possibly coming around?
Oh yeah.
Um, so maybe that what happened for that. So I, it's going to be interesting for sure because I mean we don't even know if Chadwick Boseman's coming back. So that's a big question mark in the
Well,
air.
wait. Where? How do we not know that? Because I there were reports that he wasn't coming back because of money, but I thought that was all
Right.
fake news.
I mean,
I mean, he's
well,
contracted. You know what I mean? Like he's contracted to come back.
yeah, I. But you know how this stuff goes, where you have the most successful uh, movie in the MCU franchise is I'll equate it to sports. Like you sign your contract and then you don't show up for preseason because you're holding out for a better contract. So
Yeah, but see, that's
I
where
would hate
Marvel's
for,
really smart. Is they are really good. They are really good with that paperwork, man. Because they got burned by. Well, they didn't necessarily get burned, but they just screwed up with Downey. Like that's the thing. So They didn't sign him to long term anything, and
right.
so that's why. First of all, because he was sort of a risk for the studio, he got a lot of back end points on the first movie, and so he made a ton of money from back end points. And then in order to renegotiate, and they were just kind of willing to back up the money truck for him.
Mhm.
There will never be another contract like that at Marvel ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he even lobbied. He even lobbied using the power of his contract to lobby for more money for the other Avengers. You know what I mean? Like, so that'll never happen again. And I think Chadwick is a good actor, but he's not the caliber of an actor that would warrant the type of contract that might allow him to negotiate like that between films. I mean, like
Bozeman? Oh, I don't know that I think Bozeman's an incredible actor.
he's an incredible actor as far as talent, but I don't think he's an incredible actor as far as value. You know what I mean? Like contracts are not necessarily based on your quality. It's based on how's your brand. How many people are going to put? Are you putting butts in the theaters?
I think he is as Black Panther. I think that's the X factor here. No
Right,
pun
but when he
intended.
signed his contract, he wouldn't have had that as leverage. You know what I mean?
Right. No.
So he probably didn't. I mean, like, I'm not even fully aware of his other work. You know, I'm sure it's great, but point being, if it was big, I would know about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just
Right.
probably
So,
not, right?
well, I mean, he was in 42. I don't know if you saw 42.
Oh, did he
Um,
play Jackie Robinson in 42?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, he was Jack.
wow. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
So that was probably his biggest one. He was in Marshall too. He played Thurgood Marshall. So those are kind of like his biggest roles. But you're right. He doesn't have this huge long track record of film after film, but he has had some really good roles to show his chops. But he'll forever be attached to Black
Oh,
Panther. Like
yeah, yeah.
Chadwick Boseman is Black Panther. So look, at the end of the day, it's probably dumb. It's probably fake news. It's probably all about nothing. It's, so I'm sure, maybe it's not, it's just like maybe he wants an extra point on the back end. Like it could literally, oh yeah, he did play James Brown too. That's right. I forgot
Interesting.
about that. So yeah, so it's probably nothing. He's probably going to be back. And we're probably rambling about nothing.
Yeah, I think he's a pretty safe bet to be back. And look, I think that whole team and that whole squad just feels. I mean, it's got to feel weird. I'm sure the agent wants him to renegotiate. You know what I mean? I'm sure his agent's like, get more
Oh,
money,
sure.
but like, I don't even know if that's on his radar. If I was that team, I memean, dude, you just did something so special, so culturally significant, and you have the opportunity to do something even crazier with the second one. You know what I mean? Like, dude, I'm very excited. That's probably one of the most anticipated for me, just because I'm really interested in how Wakanda technology is going to be implemented. How's Wakanda responding after the blip? I mean, there's just so many questions. You know what I mean? And I'm very excited to see um, more of that. More Bozeman, please. But yeah, let's see if we got anything else in the chat. We're gonna call it here in a second. Is Trinite? Is our good friend Trinite live yet?
Good question.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he is. We need Black
I don't
Panther
know.
versus Namor, Wakanda versus Atlantis. Yeah, dude, that would be cool.
Yeah, I'm so excited to just bring in more characters. I'm so excited for that. I mean, we had 10 great years, and man, it's going to be endless, and
Yeah.
it's exciting.
We're like
It
barely getting started. Like when you think about the comic book stories, like we're barely scratched the surface, man.
I know it makes me sad though that Tony and Cap aren't going to be around for a while. It really makes me sad because I really want to see these characters interact with all the new characters
I
that are
know.
coming in.
No,
And
I
I mean,
agree.
it's possible, but I would lean more towards unlikely, not impossible, just unlikely. And it kind of hurts my heart a little.
Yeah, no, I mean they just, dude, they just can't. Like, and it's funny because so the Russo brothers recently did a watch through or a watch party, and they were releasing a bunch of cool stuff on social media, and I think even Robert Downey Jr. was there on their Instagram live or whatever, and they were asked about coming back to the MCU, and Robert just kind of said like the people will let us know which direction they'd like us to move in, and even on his Rogan interview, like he doesn't like he's not looking to come back, but I think his main hangup is that he kind of had one of the most epic arcs in movies ever,
Yeah.
and that end in Endgame is like perfect. You know what I mean? Like his arc, it's so good that as an actor that really cares about your character and also cares about the conversations that would happen with your character. Moving forward, they're gonna write books about this. There's gonna be classes taught about this. And it's like as an actor, that body of work, you probably don't want to tarnish it at all. And I think he also feels as though the fans themselves don't want it to be tarnished. But many of us are like, yeah, no, that's all well and good, Robert, but just bring Iron Man back. You know what I mean? Like we're like, that's all cool, but like we don't care, dude.
Yeah, it's tough. Putting yourself in the actor's shoes is tough because that's all they want. They want a character, and they like to see their character to its good conclusion. And after X amount of films, technically yes, that character Tony Stark has fulfilled his arcs, and he's not wrong. He's not wrong, but I selfishly want him back.
Yeah, I selfishly want him back too. And I've talked about this before. Mark Maron has this hilarious bit about it in one of his new specials where he's talking about how like the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a lot like religion to people, and like he's making the parallels between like Christians wanting Jesus to return and Marvel fans wanting Tony Stark to return. And I'm just like, yo, like I mean, it's kind of spot on. Like it is really like ceremonial and sort of spiritual the way we engage in conversation about this stuff, and we talk about it, and then we go to the temple and we watch it take place. Well, we used to before COVID, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, it's an interesting thing. But I guess in conclusion, where do we think? Let's just kind of go back to the Captain Marvel thing because I saw some people kind of pop in late and they're like, "Wait, why wouldn't she lead the Avengers?" We think she still is, right? I mean, we still think she's going to. I think that the scoop that Grace had was interpreted in a way that made her say that. And who knows, man? She might drop a video later today talking about that. But that's where I'm at with it. I think Captain Marvel will still play a big role in the Avengers. I don't think I ever really believed that she was going to be like in charge. You know what I mean? But she's going to be one of the people at the top. Does that make sense? And do you agree?
Yeah, 100%. And like you mentioned earlier, you could easily say Tony was the leader of the Avengers. You could easily say Cap was the leader of the Avengers. The person who leads it, and it depends on the movie too.
Right.
Like like I mean, yeah, you can have many different definitions of what is it to lead. I would personally would rather lean towards Doctor Strange, but who knows? I mean, it could be Spider-Man too. I mean, it could
Yeah.
be Bruce Banner. He's been around a long time, and
Banner's real smart.
he's still there. So who knows? Who knows what they have planned? I don't think we're actually going to see a leader of the Avengers for a long time either. I think I
Mhm.
think the fallout of Tony and dying and Cap aging out in the past is going to maybe Black Panther could be the leader.
He should be.
Of the,
He should be. You know, like
so
he's got the chops for it. Yeah, and I think you could even make the argument that in Infinity War, Doctor Strange is leading the Avengers in a lot of different ways. I mean, Doctor Strange's plan is essentially the whole way they beat Thanos. Doctor Strange is the one that brings all of the Avengers to the final battle of Endgame. You know, Doctor Strange is the one that saves Tony's life so that Tony can figure out time travel and, you know, all this stuff. So it's like maybe Steven was in charge of the Avengers. You know what I mean? Like, it's so weird to who's in charge of the Avengers? There's no title. There's no throne. You know what I mean? There's no table that they sit around, you know? Like maybe there is a table that they sit around, but like there's no definitive like who's in charge of the Avengers. And I think it's like such a semantic thing. But yeah, look, Brie Larson is here to stay, man. Captain Marvel's here to stay. Lover or hater, she's here to stay. That's what I think.
I agree.
All right, boys and girls. Well, we're gonna call it there. Let's see. First of all, thanks so much for everybody being here. I thought it was crazy, but awesome that Jeremy Conrad came in here. I was like a little bit nervous. I was like, oh man, we're gonna talk about Jeremy's scoop while he's in here.
He's checking up on you.
He's checking up. He's making sure we don't disparage. But I thought that was cool. Thank you guys so much for being here this morning. Should drop a video later today on the main channel. I apologize. There's no video yesterday. I just got caught up in a bunch of work. But we will get back to it today. And Adam, before we get out of here, man, tell the people about your channel and what do you got going on?
So my channel, FanJackShirt, you can find it pretty much everywhere on YouTube, Twitter, everywhere is the same name. I have two things going on right now. One is our current weekly Wednesday night show, which is Debate 8, and we pick a topic and we throw it in a tournament bracket and we vote. And by the end, we have a winner. Last night we did treasure hunter films, and it was a lot of fun. A lot of good choices, like the indie films, Mummy, National Treasure, all sorts of stuff. So definitely go back and watch it. And I recently this week started a morning show where we just it's at 9 a.m. Eastern, so before Josh's, and we're done before the Josh comes on air. So don't worry about any overlap there. And it's basically just picking a couple stories that were interesting from the day before, and just a casual talk of what we think about it. And not just comic stuff. I know Josh crushes that and Trinity crushes that. This is more general movie stuff.
Yeah, so, it's good stuff, man. I was telling Trinity yesterday too. I was like, man, it's such a good morning rotation. You know what I mean? You kicking it off, and then we take the middle slot, and then kind of go over to Trinity stuff. There's a lot of crossover, I think, between our subscribers and our bases, but that is exactly what I want. And I want to get LB on here too, and sort of create this this group of kind of collaborators, and we can all sort of grow out our bases together and have a lot of cross-pollination, because look, it's great, man. And there needs to be other voices in the conversation. It can't just be Josh, for the love of God. It cannot just be me. So I'm very happy to have you here and a part of the community, man. I do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Of
course. All right, guys, head on over to Trinity's stream. I guess I'll quickly check and see if he's live so I can try to grab that link. And then we will go from there. I hope to see you guys over there. A lot of cool stuff on the horizon, too, for the channel. Working on the trivia stuff. We got a cosplay thing going on. So there should be some good stuff coming. I don't see if Trinity's live yet, and my internet is...
No restraints play.
Boom. Okay, I got him. Let me grab this link, and I will send people over there. Ryan might get to the link before I even do. Let's see here. Oh, man. All right, here we go. Bada boom, bada bing. Head on over to Trinity's stream, guys. I'll see you guys over there, and I'll see you later today with the main video on the channel. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.